A gruesome story leads off our newscast.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a north side apartment, and now they wonder if they've uncovered some kind of death factory. This was the scene earlier this morning. Police hired a private contractor to haul a refrigerator and a tank of acid out of the apartment in the 900 block of North 25th Street. Because of the acid, some neighbors were evacuated briefly. Police found parts of bodies, leading them to believe the man they arrested is a mass murderer.
Today marks 20 years since the arrest of a man whose house of horrors stained Milwaukee's reputation.
Tonight, Patrick Palantonio goes to the neighborhood where Jeffrey Dahmer lured and killed 12 of his 17 victims.
Man, this is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey!
Jeffrey Dahmer's life, leading up to his gruesome crimes, is a chilling case study of a serial killer. Here is a detailed look at his background, the escalation of his criminal activities, and the aftermath of his arrest. Early life. Jeffrey Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Leonel and Joyce Dahmer. As a child, Dahmer was described as shy and quiet. However, there was signs of disturbing behavior early on. Around the age of 4, he underwent a surgery for a double hernia, and his parents noticed that he became increasingly withdrawn. His father, a chemist, noted that the young Jeffrey was curious about animal bones, something later that evolved into a fascination with dissecting dead animals. Dahmer's early life was marked by his parents' turbulent marriage, characterized by arguments and eventual divorce. When he was 18, his father frequently away for work, and his mother struggled with depression and later addicted to tranquilizers. These domestic issues may have contributed to Dahmer's sense of isolation. By his teenage years, he had become a heavy drinker, often showing up to school intoxicated. Dahmer also began to develop dark fantasies, many of which revolved around domination and control over men. These fantasies became more intense as he reached puberty, and while he tried to suppress them, they would later form the foundation of his horrific crimes. First victim, 1978. Dahmer took his first victim just after graduating high school. In June 1978, his first victim was a 18-year-old Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker. Dahmer picked up and brought him back to his house under the pretense of drinking together. After spending some time with Hicks, Dahmer bludgeoned him with a dumbbell and strangled him to his demise. He later dismembered Hicks' body and disposed of his remains by crushing the bones and scattering them in the woods behind his family home. This demise marked the beginning of a long period of brutal demises. Although Dahmer wouldn't take another victim nearly a decade. Intermission, 1978 to 1987. After the demise of Stephen Hicks, Dahmer attempted to lead a relatively normal life. He briefly attended Ohio State University but dropped out due to poor grades and lack of motivation. His father encouraged him to join the military in 1979, and Dahmer served as a combat medic in Germany. However, his alcoholism worsened and he was discharged in 1981 for being unfit for service. Upon his return to the United States, Dahmer bounced between relatives' home before settling in Milwaukee. He continued to drink heavily and had a minor run-ins with the law, including an arrest for indecent exposure in 1982. During this period, Dahmer's violent fantasies persisted, but he was able to suppress them for a while. Resurgence of Demise 1987 to 1991. Dahmer's victim taking spree resumed in November 1987 when he demised Stephen Towney in a hotel room in Milwaukee. Dahmer claimed to have no memory of being the one that caused the demise of Stephen Towney, but when he awoke, Towney was unalived and his body was severely beaten. Dahmer brought the corpse back to his grandmother's house, where he dismembered it. From that point onwards, his needs to take victims intensified, and his method became even more calculated. Over the next 4 years, Dahmer unalived 16 more men, mostly young gay men of color. He lured them to his apartment with offers of money, drinks, or companionship. Dahmer would drug his victims with sleeping pills of sedatives and then engage in necrophilic acts before or after unaliving them. He often strangled or stabbed his victims to their demise. After the unalivings, Dahmer would dismember the bodies, photograph the process, and keep parts of the bodies as trophies. Some body parts, like skulls, were preserved and even consumed parts of the victims, earning him the nickname the Milwaukee Cannibal. Notable victim and methods. Many of Dahmer's victims were from marginalized communities, including immigrants and African Americans, which partly contributed to the lack of media attention until his arrest. Dahmer used several techniques to prolong his control over his victims, including attempting to create living zombies by drilling holes into their skulls and injecting hydrochloric acid or boiling water into their brains. This bizarre experimentation failed and the victims ultimately died. Arrest 1991. Jeffrey Dahmer's downfall came on July 22, 1991, when Tracy Edwards, a would-be victim, managed to escape from Dahmer's apartment after being drugged and handcuffed. Edward flagged down 2 Milwaukee police officers and led them back to Dahmer's apartment. Inside, they found photographs of dismembered bodies, including several heads in the refrigerators, hearts in the freezer, and skeletal remains throughout the apartment. Dahmer immediately confessed to his crimes upon being arrested. He gave a detailed account of the unalivings, explaining that his motivation stemmed from an obsession with controlling and possessing his victims completely. Dahmer's cold and detailed confession shocked law enforcement and the public. Trial and imprisonment. In 1992, Jeffrey Dahmer was tried for 15 counts of unalivings in Milwaukee. His defense's attempt to argue that Dahmer was insane. given the extreme nature of his crimes. However, the court ruled that Dahmer was legally sane and aware of his actions. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. During this sentencing, Dahmer expressed remorse and stated he wished for his death to come quickly. Dahmer was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage, Wisconsin. In prison, he became a born-again Christian, who many questioned the sincerity of his conversion. He spent much of his time in isolation, as his notoriety made him a target for other inmates. Death. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to his demise by fellow inmates. Christopher Scarver, while performing work details in the prison, Scarver, who was also servicing a life sentence for unalivings, later claimed that he unalived Dahmer because he was disgusted by Dahmer's crimes and perceived a lack of remorse. Dahmer's demise brought a grim end to one of the most notorious criminal cases in American history. Legacy and cultural impact. Jeffrey Dahmer case has left a lasting impact on American culture and criminal justice. It raised important questions about how law enforcement handled cases involving marginalized communities, as several missed opportunities to catch Dahmer occurred. For sentence in 1991, one of Dahmer's victims, Konerak Sinthasophon, a 14-year-old boy, escaped Dahmer's apartment but was returned to him by police, who believed the boy was an adult and that the situation was a lover's quarrel. Sinthasophon was unalived shortly after. Dahmer's life and crimes have inspired numerous books, documentaries, and films, including the 2022 Netflix series Monster, The Jeffrey Dahmer Story. His case remains one of the most chilling examples of extreme criminal behavior, raising complex psychological and societal questions that continues to be studied today. This was your host Didas signing out.